This is where we start to sew the skirt together. Look for the nicks again. The centre back skirt has triple nicks together, 3 nicks together. So those two edges are going to go together. You'll notice the top of the skirt is a little bit narrower than the bottom of the skirt, which is quite flared in comparison. So match up those two edges with the fabric right sides together. Make sure the edges are right on top of each other. One should not stick out further from the other. And place your pins as shown from the outside edge in. When you get to the machine, you're going to be sewing with a 1.5 seam allowance again, so the second line. Line it up with the second line, the edge of the fabric. Hold those threads at the very start of your sewing to make sure they don't pull back, and do a back stitch. So this is your first long seam, and it is quite a long seam. So just be patient. Take your time, make sure you keep a nice distance so that the needle is the same distance from that edge from the on the second line. Backstitch at the end as well, and clip the threads as you go. Now we're looking for the side edges of the skirt, the side seams. They've just got one nick that's fairly close to the top of the skirt, so you'll be looking for that to join your fronts to your backs at the side seams. So try and match up those nicks. Make sure the skirt is right sides together and the shape of the skirt looks very similar to the one that you're sewing it to. And again, make sure the edges are right on top of each other. They should match up as perfectly as you possibly can. So now we're sewing the side seams again. Use the second line as a guide. It's a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. Hold the threads at the very start. Do a little back stitch. And just try and keep steady and straight so you have a lovely even seam that is 1.5 centimeters from the edge of the fabric. That distance is called the seam allowance. Now we're planning to overcast the edges of our centre back seam and our side seams. To do this, we're going to use a serpentine stitch, which is just like a wiggly line. Some machines have a triple zigzag, which is similar. For the serpentine stitch, you'll have a size 5 width and about probably a 1.5 length on the dial. And we're sewing just on the edge of the fabric. We don't want to sew over the stitching line that we've sewn. It's going to stop the threads from fraying on our side seam. So it should be right at the edge of the fabric, and see how not many threads come off. The iron is a really valuable tool when you're sewing. You get a lovely finish if you make sure you iron your seams as you go along before you cross them with another seam. So now's the time to actually iron all those seams. I would be pushing the side seam allowances towards the front panels, and the centre back seam, it really doesn't matter which way you push it, just as long as you give it an iron, especially at the top of the skirt where we're going to join the waistband. While you're at the iron, it's also a really good idea to iron the hem that you've done at the fronts on the front panels of the skirt. Just freshen them up